Welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. Tonight is October 30th, 2013, and this is episode 275. It's recorded live by us and Ken, mostly, though for some reason we've all lost a lot of weight. But we won't get into that now. You can get a hold of us at podcast at pcper.com. You could check out these videos at pcper.com/podcast. You can leave very, very nice messages for Ken and Ryan. They will truly appreciate it from you. Just don't call them soulless gingers. Even though it's true. You can follow Ryan at twitter.com/Ryan Shrout or twitter.com/PCPer. And Ken, do we have a special touching short video from Ryan explaining what's going on since he was killed in that car crash going to SFO?
Very, very tragic. Actually, I think he was supposed to fly out SJC. But no, I think we need to enter the first article before that, maybe. I don't know.
Well, fine. Fine, be that way. SJC. Who wants to fly out of San Jose, Santa Clara?
Everyone who's in San Jose, Santa Clara.
Pretty much. Anyway, PCPer, we've got a Halloween giveaway. And who's it brought to us by? Corsair and Gigabyte. Jeremy likes to call him Gigabyte.
Goodbye.
It's only because this really amazing speech given to us by a VP of Gigabyte at CES some 4 years ago now,
Yeah.
3 years ago.
A life-changing experience.
It was. It was the G.I. Kira.
Yes, very classic name.
Anyway, tell us what we win, Jeremy.
Well, apparently we're not going to win anything, Josh, even if we do dress up. So, like you,
Well, I
I
dress
decided
up
not to.
Every
But-
day.
What you can pick up is the vast majority of one hell of an orange system. You get a Corsair Graphite 230T orange case, a nice Hydro H80i water cooling with LED, of course, set to orange, a Raptor K50 RGB keyboard with the LED set to, you'll never guess, orange, a Raptor M40 mouse, which is red, but hey, I mean, you can't just go straight orange. Your pumpkin would be uncarved then. You need lights. Corsair Vengeance Pro 8 gig 1600 megahertz memory. You got Corsair Neutron GTX 120 gig SSD. You got an RM Series 650 watt power supply. And from Gigabyte, you've got a Z87X OC.
I thought that was Z87X from you
It depends on which
Canadians.
side of the border I'm swinging on.
I'm not sure. What side of the border are you swinging on?
Well, either
You
way,
just
it's as well ready.
want to live in Seattle, don't you?
No, I've actually never been there yet. I probably should go.
It's only like 200 miles away. Come on.
That's not that far.
No. But you don't have a car. But you have a cat.
No, but there's bus systems.
Ride that cat. Spank that kitty all the way to the border.
Yes, hello, Mr. Customs Officer. I'm just motivating my pussy. Oh. Why are you taking me away? But regardless, would you
Finish
please
with
take a
what they
picture of
give
your
us.
costume? We've been seeing a lot of people with photoshopped PCPer papers. No, the idea was that the paper was also real, because otherwise it could be two photoshops together. So send in your pictures of costumes, and at some point somebody may or may not judge you a winner, and you might end up with a very Halloween-themed system slightly after Halloween, but hey, you've got all year to upgrade it. Come on. Enjoy.
So, send the pictures, the candid photography to Ryan at that address. He will appreciate it. He may even show samples here and there to his closest acquaintances. So join and maybe win some hardware. Okay. You know what? Ryan set up this amazing spam list.
That was me.
You could get the best Pfizer products for cheap. $1.50 per pill of Viagra.
Canadian
You too
Viagra.
can get this if you join the PC per spam list. Okay, Ken, actually tell us about the spam list and what it actually does.
Oh, it's just magical. Every time we go live, and either Ryan and I remember to send the email, you get a notification about, I don't know, anywhere from an hour to 10 or 15 minutes ahead, telling you exactly...
To an hour after.
Well, there was that one time. But it'll tell you exactly when we're going live, so you can catch any impromptu things we do, like the 290X live stream last week we did after the podcast, unannounced. It's pretty awesome. I know you're all disappointed that you missed it.
Snockered. It wasn't
Josh was pretty
funny.
great in it.
So, guys, this 290X is, yeah, it was bad. You ought to watch it. Enlightening. Ken, move along.
Sign up now. Do it. PCPro.com/subscribe. Boom. Done.
Nicely done, Ken. You are like a professional at this. You should go on national television.
They don't allow gingers on TV.
Tell that to one major ginger, and he's got a 92 Taurus.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
even female.
Yeah, get moving on it. So the week in review, something major happened like an hour after the podcast. Okay, maybe like 15 minutes, and I had no idea about it until 15 minutes before the podcast. I don't know.
And you still
But
don't
anyway.
remember a minute.
Ryan, what?
And you still don't remember a minute of it.
Probably not. But, the more I drink, the more I recollect from that evening. Isn't that state-dependent memory thing kind of interesting?
It seems to work for me, too.
Outstanding. Good thing I don't sniff glue this week. So, Radeon R9 290X, a.k.a. Hawaii. Jack Lord. You know him. Ryan went to visit Hawaii on AMD's dime. None of the rest of us did, including Ken, his right-hand man, who has the Perpetual Motion engine at the fore.
Geez, he did clean something up today.
He did. But anyway, it took on the Titans, and overall, it was faster. So, Ken, is this the first video
Oh, it
of
is.
Ryan?
Yes.
His clip where he speaks of such things that he wrote of?
I'm sure he'll love this. I think we should just keep it here for a while.
I see he took the suit jacket off.
Just
Tell me that you like it.
Good thing he never watches these.
Someone just shoved a stave up my nether regions. Look at the artwork behind me.
Podcast. If you are listening to this, it means
I'm
once
dead.
again I am not there to attend in person, which is starting to aggravate the crap out of me. Luckily, we
I'm
have
dead.
Josh, Alan, Jeremy, and mystery fourth guest to help maintain the official Josh Tech podcast. So you guys are in good hands. But that being said, I wanted to be able to give my opinion on a couple of items and kind of help maybe guide a discussion or get some discussion started. The
I'd
first thing I want
apologize
to talk
in
about,
advance.
obviously, is the AMD Radeon R9 290X. This product actually launched the same day as our podcast went up, but we had to record it before last week. So we didn't get a chance to talk about it on the podcast. But I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time specifically today talking about it because Josh and I actually did a live stream at midnight Eastern Time, with the launch of the 290X, where we discussed a lot of things about the product, about the performance, and I think that stands to be the best place for you to get that. You can find that in our 290X review, or you can go to youtube.com/PCPer and see that video that we did, the live stream on the 290X. What I'll say about the 290X very quickly is that it is a hell of a performing part. The Hawaii GPU from AMD definitely lived up to that claim. It was faster than the GTX 780, and in some cases faster than the GTX Titan, which, considering that the price that AMD put on it, like $550, was really impressive. It was very aggressive as well. It was a full $100 under the GTX 780 at the time that it was outperforming. The 290X wasn't without issue, though. It had issues with temperature. They were letting the GPU get 95C, though they claimed confidence in its ability to run at 95C for extended periods of time, for the life of the product, essentially. And the fan noise was loud. So there are some concerns there that we're going to spend some more time on and addressing in the coming weeks. But the other part of the story, I guess I need to make sure we point out, is that I did get a second R9 290X, and we tested CrossFire, and we tested, in particular, multi-display CrossFire with a 4K monitor. So our previous story looked at Eyefinity 5760 by 1080 with CrossFire. This one looked at 3840 by 2160 with CrossFire, but it's the same idea. It's a multi-head display. So the issues are identical between 4K and Eyefinity. As it turns out, the new implementation of CrossFire that does not use a bridge, goes strictly to the PCI Express bus, appears to have fixed the frame pacing issues that the Radeon HD 7000 series had and the R9 280X still has for multi-panel, multi-GPU scaling. It's not perfect. There's still a lot of room for improvement, but we're not seeing the drop frames. We're not seeing the interleaved frames that we saw previously. So AMD has done a good job of implementing that so far. We still have a whole lot more testing we want to do at different resolutions, different configurations with the 290Xs. So we'll definitely be getting into that again in the next couple of weeks, and we'll definitely have a more in-depth discussion about it on the podcast. And I think what needs to be said along with discussion of this story is the price drop that NVIDIA dropped on the community on the GTX 780, the GTX 770, and the announcement of the pricing of the GTX 780 Ti. So the GTX 780 went from $650 to $500. It's a $150 price drop. Now puts it $50 less than the R9 290X if you can find them in stock still. And plus, NVIDIA has started the bundle where you're getting 3 games now. You're getting Batman Arkham Origins, you're getting Splinter Cell, the new Splinter Cell, and Assassin's Creed 4 bundled in with the GTX 780 or GTX 770 for that matter. So the GTX 780 is a little bit lower performance than the 290X, but it's quieter. It tends to be a more efficient processor, and you get a pretty good bundle of those 3 games, plus $100 off of that NVIDIA Shield if you want to take them up on that offer as well. So the pricing adjustment that they did with the GTX 780 kind of shakes things up a bit and makes things much more complex in terms of selecting a GPU than I think AMD would have liked this soon after the release of the 290X. They also dropped the 770 price. It went from $399 to $329. So it's a much closer comparison with the R9 280X. But that's maybe a little bit kind of what we expected to see. We expected the GTX 770 to come down to that level, maybe even a little bit sooner than it did. But again, it also gets the 3-game bundle as well. So that's kind of my summation of the 290X from last week, in addition to what it changes with the outlook with the GTX 780 and 770. So I'll leave that for the rest of the group to discuss for a little bit longer.
That is so nice from Ryan to talk to us from beyond the grave, as it is. I'd feel really bad if, in fact, he did get killed in between Santa Clara and Florence, Kentucky.
But the only reason you'd feel bad is because you made a joke.
Well, I like the guy, and also he pays me.
That's what it sounded like.
Yeah. So, number 1, number 2 could be interchangeable, but they're both there and both perfectly valid. So anyway.
Unless he's still alive.
What's that, Jeremy?
Unless he's still alive.
Happily, he is. This is a triumph. He's making a note
he's not
here.
a triumph because he might not live.
Huge success. So let's talk about the 290X. You know what? The things that I find most interesting is that it performs right on the level of the Titan, but it's 100 millimeter square smaller of a chip. GCN architecture is pretty impressive. And not only that, it's a 512-bit memory architecture. It packs in a lot of stuff in that, 430, 450 millimeter square package. It's about, 70 to 80 millimeter square bigger than the previous 280X, otherwise known as the HD 7970. And Tahiti? Yes, Tahiti. So AMD put a lot of performance in a very small package, which makes Jeremy happy.
Very happy.
Because you've got a cat. You don't want to kill it. Okay. Anyway. And so it's kind of amazing that it's able to take on the Titan, which is a 550 millimeter squared part. Performance-wise, they're very close together. I think the Titan, if you were to actually look at GPU stuff and double precision, it probably has the edge. But it's not as much as you would think. This is a near, 5 teraflop per second single precision chip. And so it's beefy. AMD did a nice job, but it seems like the problem that they have now is able to effectively cool that chip. It's pretty dense, and it runs hot, as we have seen with the 95C. And it's going to be very interesting to see what the partners do in terms of cooling from like ASUS, MSI, all the other guys, Gigabyte with their Triforce, XFX, I would say EVGA, but they're all NVIDIA, so it doesn't make sense. But it's going to be very interesting to see what they can do from a cooling standpoint, because it's the reference cooler is not weak. It's amazing that it can keep it under 95C, but again, we start seeing clock speeds start to decrease after the chip has warmed up, and so performance is kind of a tricky business with that. I mean, yeah, if you are in an ice cold room, have been letting it just sit at idle and then go run a benchmark, it's obviously going to be faster because it's going to be closer to the 1 gigahertz level. But if you keep it running for a while, next thing you know, it's running in the 870 to 860 megahertz range in the higher profile programs, which will more fully utilize a GPU of this caliber. What do you guys think of this particular card? I mean, was it a shock to you that AMD was able to put something out as it has? I mean, it certainly was not a surprise because we've been hearing about this a lot lately. In fact, for about the last 3 or 4 months, there have been a pretty steady stream of leaks. No pun intended.
It's very true. And I mean, it's nice to see a little bit of new silicon after the other series, which, as you might have mentioned at length last week, the days of the giant video card leaps are over. Not necessarily a bad thing, but what really excites me about this one is frame pacing on iFinity. As much as, hey, fixing CrossFire is nice, I don't have 2 graphics cards, but I've got 3 monitors. So the idea that, silicon that's actually powerful enough to push 3 monitors, or maybe 6 off of the same card if you buy another adapter, with none of that frame pacing issue that we've been seeing, or as you mentioned on the 290 after show, some of the visual glitches that tend to occur in iFinity. So it's really exciting to see that AMD has, should we say, changed their position on frame rating to saying, hey, look, this is beautiful. We can make this smooth as butter. And hey, pick up a bunch of cards, pick up a bunch of monitors. You're going to have just as much fun with an AMD card as you will with an NVIDIA card, which is not something I've been able to say on the hardware leaderboard for a couple of months now. Yeah, actually more than a couple of months, almost a year, isn't it?
Pretty much. But what's going to be very interesting here is actually testing in multiple situations, because they have these 2 DMA controllers on the chip that directly communicate with each other in CrossFire, TriFire configurations. There's enough bandwidth, apparently, in these 2 controllers that it can saturate a 16-wide PCIe bus. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what performance is like when you have a PCI 2.0 bus, like with any AMD 990FX chipset, any Sandy Bridge type chip, and some of the Sandy Bridge E, they were still limited to PCIe 2.0. We might actually see some performance differences between those, and certainly AMD still has some work to do, because if you take a look at some of Ryan's graphs, they're not as smooth as what we see with the 780 SLI options.
No, but it's not the
780
giant
SLI
orange
still has
background.
the. What's that, Jeremy?
Yes, but you're right. But it's not the giant orange background that it used
It
to.
is not the giant orange wainscoting that we have been used to for many, well, almost a year now. So this is a huge improvement for AMD. They got rid of the over-the-top connection, OTT. Yeah, you know me. And apparently, the previous CrossFire solution would write the frames back to main memory and then come back to the other card. And that's why we saw an amazing amount of drops, all kinds of other issues. And I mean, this is kind of a hardware problem. And they fixed it with the 290X by having these two DMA engines per card and able to do the direct memory access with each other and pass off the frames and other information. So it's a big jump for AMD. It's a solid improvement in their technology.
Now, there is one thing that people are going to be perhaps a little upset about with the reference cards. The decibels that they produce at idle are comparable to the Titan under load. So if you are, if you have delicate ears that are flowers and don't like to hear things, you may not like this card. Flat out, I mean, it's hitting almost 50 decibels under load, and under idle, it's at 32.5 compared to about 35 for the GeForce. Now, it is a logarithmic scale, so it is significantly louder, or significantly quieter than it looks, but at the same time, it's not a quiet card. On the other hand, if all you're looking at is pure performance and the ability to put to 6 monitors from one GPU, and don't really mind the fact that it is maybe a little bit power hungry, you're going to love this card. There's none of the negatives that we've sort of, the caveats that we've added to AMD reviews over the past year, where, yes, it's wonderful, but upgrading might be a problem. This one, buy a good PSU. Get a good case, consider putting water cooling on it, and you're going to love this thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of positives to AMD right now in their graphics. Certainly in single card solutions from the, 260X on up. I mean, they're all solid products for the price. And their drivers have improved dramatically for single card performance from what we have seen in the olden days where people hated ATI drivers, and for very good reason. So yeah, I mean, the 290 is certainly a shot across the bow of NVIDIA, and we have seen a good reaction from NVIDIA in terms of pricing. So this was, a fantastic product, and what they have done with their entire product line has really been a boon to consumers across the board coming into this holiday season, which is when a lot of people tend to start buying higher-end GPUs, CPUs, motherboards, stuff like that, and, of course, Battlefield 4, which may or may not be a big impetus to a lot of this. And speaking of other video cards from AMD, Ryan did a roundup of R9 280X products from ASUS, MSI, and Sapphire. Can't forget Sapphire with their Vapor X and Venom, or whatever it's called. But yeah, Ryan has a few things to say about this. Cue Ryan.
What to talk about was a roundup I wrote of a set of 3 Radeon R9 280X cards. So this is the Tahiti-based card, essentially the same card as the HD 7970 GHz edition. We took a look at an ASUS DirectCU 2 unit, at an MSI Twin Frozer Gaming.
I hate YouTube. I'm going to let this pause a minute and see if it catches back up.
And I'm still dead. Here's
Play
my
Snake
death
while you're
mask.
waiting for it to...
I love that.
This is my death mask.
That freeze frame's pretty good, too.
Record this. Death mask.
Card, and then the Sapphire Toxic card. All 3 of these cards come overclocked out of the box to varying degrees. The ASUS card, I think, was 70 megahertz faster and 100 megahertz faster on the memory speed. MSI card was 50 megahertz faster on the GPU base clock on the memory speed. And then the highest overclock was the Sapphire Toxic card that I believe was 150 megahertz, 125 megahertz faster on the GPU clock, and then 100 megahertz faster on the memory clock. So you can look at the review, look through the benchmarks, see how they compare. It would obviously make sense. We compared the reference speed 280X against the ASUS, the MSI, and the Sapphire card. The Sapphire card was the fastest out of the box, followed by the ASUS, followed by the MSI, followed by the reference. This probably is not a surprise to anybody, but the big kind of differentiating point for these retail cards now is the custom coolers and how that all works, noise levels, power consumption, etc. So if you look at that page of the review, you'll find that the 280X MSI card is actually the quietest in my testing. It actually proved to be the quietest under a full load, followed by the ASUS, very closely by the ASUS card, while the Sapphire card was a hell of a lot louder. It was noticeably louder. If you look at the three cards, you'll see that the Sapphire has the most intricate cooler design. Intricate, it's the biggest, it's got the most heat pipes, it's got the most fans, it's got 3 fans instead of 2, it's got LEDs on it. It's definitely, all three of the cards are built very well. All three of the cards have custom PCBs, and all three of the manufacturers spend a lot of time making sure that they're better and above and beyond the reference designs. But the Sapphire card just kind of looks meaner when you stare at all three of the cards. So even though performance was the best on the Sapphire card, power consumption was also like 45 or 50 watts higher on the Sapphire card than the other two options, which is a lot. Like, that's a lot. It's showing you that they're having to push the voltage up quite a bit in order to get that additional clocking out of the box, right? But they're able to keep the GPU at the right temperature. It's at the 71 to 72 Celsius range under load, which is the same as the other two cards. But, when you've got higher power consumption and you want to keep the temperature, you've got to make up for it by running more air through it, which means louder fan speeds or louder fan noise. And it was a pretty dramatic difference between the Sapphire and the other two cards. So keep that in mind if you're interested in either three of these cards. So overclocking wise, the Sapphire one did also overclock the best in my testing, followed by the ASUS card and the MSI card. But all three were relatively close there. And when we're talking, increments of 15, 20, 25 megahertz, even 50 megahertz really on a GPU clock over 1,000 megahertz isn't going to make a huge amount of performance difference. But your mileage is going to vary on these cards when you overclock them anyway. This is still the same overclocking that we saw with the HG7000 series. You're just increasing clocks, increasing the reclocks, and if you have the capability of increasing voltages, it's not more complicated like the PowerTune update for the R9 290X card was. So I think my takeaway from these three cards was I kind of like the ASUS and the MSI cards almost equally, with maybe a slight nod to the ASUS card for the board design that they have there and the slightly higher out-of-box overclocking with the memory speed. The Sapphire card was the most impressive looking and performing, but if you're not using some of the more advanced features like the voltage read points at the top of the card, then I don't know if you're willing to sacrifice the sound level differences for the performance levels that you get, right? If you're into, I want the most performance for my dollar, and I'm willing to overclock above and beyond what the manufacturer is actually presenting when you buy the card, then the Sapphire card may be the better of these three options, the best of these three options. It's also the most expensive. I believe the ASUS and MSI cards were about $305 or $310, while the Sapphire card was $350. So that is my kind of summation of 280X. Back to you guys.
And he's still dead. Fascinating. Beyond the grave, Ryan Shroud. I've been, oddly enough, ASUS sent me that same 280X, DC2 top board. I was testing it, and Ryan stole all of my thunder, and I will never forgive him again, hence why he is dead. if he gets murdered, I'm going to feel really bad because I'm going to be going to court too and not getting paid and losing what I would consider a friend.
But you saved on the Hitman.
Yeah, I guess I kind of did.
You're not supposed to go cheap on Hitman, Josh.
Cheap is my middle name. Have you seen my office? It's insulated in video cards. Funny. Anyway, moving along. I wrote a little thing up. Oddly enough, second week in a row, I actually wrote something up. Why in the hell does Ryan pay me? I'm still not entirely sure. It must be my shiny head. It glows.
Or your arms.
My arms are not charmy. But ARM is shiny. The company, because they're taking over the world slowly but surely. And they made a big announcement this week. Some people paid attention, some people did not. Little do some people know that ARM also licenses GPU technology. They call it the Mali. I always thought it was Mali. I don't know. Mali? Mali. The T600 last year and throughout this year was their highest end offering. It offered OpenGL ES 3.0 functionality as well as, I believe, DirectX 11 for those who were wishing to use in a Windows environment. But they were solid GPUs, but they were not exciting. They did not perform nearly as well as some of the other offerings from, say, like NVIDIA, Adreno, aka Qualcomm, and the Imagination Technologies 6000 series? Series 6. Got to get this stuff right. So they introduced the Mali T700 series. It was comprised of the T720 and the T760. The T720 is the lower power version that takes over from the Mali T, well, not even T, it was just the Mali 450 MP. And it improves not only performance, but also functionality. So it is a true OpenGL ES 3.0 part. It can run all the Epic Citadel stuff that you could throw at it. Whether or not they port it over to Android effectively, that's another question. At the high end, they have the T760. It can be comprised of upwards of 16 stream units. Now, these stream units are very different monsters than what we see from, say, NVIDIA and AMD with their Fermi and GCN, not Fermi, but Kepler and GCN architectures, respectively. So, each one of these T760s is about 300 gigaflops, 380 gigaflops of actual potential performance. And when we're dealing with tablets that have screen sizes that are just sick, I mean, what's the highest screen tablet size you have seen yet, Ken?
Size or resolution?
Resolution.
25 by 16, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, that's just kind of insane
Yeah.
for a mobile chip to try to paint those pictures. And so we see a big push from all of these graphics guys to be able to fill in the pixels as fast and as many as possible. And so we get these architectures like the new Mali T760. It has, again, 16 stream units. It has all kinds of interesting memory architecture tweaks. They have internal compression so that memory bandwidth is decreased and power is not increased when they really need it. Boy, I could just go on forever. And they also have really kind of interesting things with, because it's tile-based renderer, instead of like an immediate mode renderer like most other graphics chips out there in the desktop, in the PC. They have an interesting power and bandwidth saving technique that deals with composition. So in any Android screen, you're going to have tiles that the entire frame is broken into that will not change. And so they can intelligently tell which tiles have data that has changed, and they will only transmit those tiles to be recomposited later into the screen that you see, so they don't waste, again, power or bandwidth. And I think that's just a really nifty way of handling some of the issues that they're looking at. So these are two new chips, again, OpenGL ES 3.0. These, in fact, go up to DirectX 11.1. They are some of the first chips to handle OpenCL and standard GPU stuff. It is not HSA compliant. We will not see those again for a while on the extreme mobile side that ARM is producing. But at the same time, it's a nice improvement. They've done a ton of work on the actual transistor design with the foundries to lower power consumption, increase transistor switching speed, and also have taken these designs and have shrunk them just because they have better layout routines, have a better understanding of the standard cells that ARM has developed for these products to make it a much more dense product, but also a more power efficient product. So there's a lot of hand tuning involved with these, and ARM has multiple engineering groups that work with each of the major foundries, except Intel, maybe, as we will see with the Altera news. But anyway, they have these guys working with the foundries to try to not only expedite the development of products based on the ARM architectures, but also to improve, again, performance and power characteristics of these products. So it's a big launch for them. I mean, these are much more competitive products with the Adreno and the Imagination Technologies, OpenGL, ES 3.0 based parts. And maybe in the next year we will see a greater adoption in higher-end products based on the Mali architectures with the T700 series. So any of you guys have comments, things you want to talk about? Because, I talk a lot. Slurred, but I talk a lot.
But the only thing I'd do is bring up the Altera deal, which we could either bring up now or bring up later.
Let's do it now. Let's do it now. Come on.
Yeah,
just
get it out of the way.
Okay, Altera. Let me tell you about that.
Trigate.
Intel, as you well may know, has opened up its fabs to a select series of partners. One of them being Altera, a well-recognized and respected FPGA chip producer. And what's kind of interesting here is that Altera is integrated the latest ARM IP into these chips on the 14-nanometer Tri-Gate process that Intel is utilizing for their Broadwell chips that they will be shipping in Q1 of 2014. So this is not going to happen overnight, but it will be happening soon, that they are opening up their fabs to the Altera guys. Now, these are not standalone ARM chips that can be used in cell phones, because that's the last thing Intel really wants, because they got their Bay Trail just coming out, 22-nanometer Tri-Gate, that they're aiming for phones and tablets. The last thing you want to do is have Altera selling standard ARM 64-bit cores on 16-nanometer or 14-nanometer Tri-Gate before Intel has a comparable product to them. So it's not going to happen that way. It's going to be
Intel's smart enough not to do a direct competitor on their own fabs.
Exactly. I mean, nobody wants to do that, and that's not a good idea. But yeah, these are FPGAs. They are not comparable to what you see in your cell phones. These are, very highly programmable parts. You can do all kinds of interesting things with. They just happen to have ARM IP embedded into them. So we're not going to see them in little cell watches, cell phones, what have you.
And if you don't believe Josh, I believe that Ryan also has a clip on this.
Does he have a clip on that?
I think he might.
Ryan Clip 3.0. Run it, Ken.
I'm out of town. I'm not on the podcast because I'm attending my first ARM TechCon in Santa Clara. And this is kind of a convention where ARM makes its case for the future. Its partners come to demonstrate its products, and a lot of networking goes on that I'm not really involved in, as I'm not actually designing these parts. They did make one major announcement here about some new Mali GPUs that Josh wrote a really good article about on the site, so I'll let him kind of talk to that. But those are pretty important for ARM and how they're going to attack and aggressively kind of try to get their way into both the CPU and GPU side of these SoCs as they're being built. The other thing I wanted to talk about that was interesting was the Intel Altera announcement that I wrote a short news piece on. So Altera announced with Intel, I think back in February, that they were going to work together to build FPGAs on Intel's upcoming 14 nanometer Tri-Gate transistor technology in those fabs. And it came out this week that, in fact, Altera was going to be including Cortex A53 CPU processors on some of these FPGAs, and those are the upcoming. It's one of the upcoming ARM 64-bit SoC components, right? It's one of the 64-bit processors coming up, and so this raised a lot of discussion about Intel will now be manufacturing a piece of silicon that has a Cortex A53 ARM-based 64-bit processor on it. And so the immediate discussion that you have to have is Intel doing the right thing for them as a company, right? Because for Intel to come into the mobile space that ARM is currently dominating in, everybody universally has agreed that the one advantage Intel has is their process technology. They are usually a full node ahead of what TSMC and Global Foundries are doing, right? So Intel is well into production of 22 nanometer. They're in their second generation of part that's using it, while TSMC and Global Foundries still aren't really producing much of that, and it doesn't look like, honestly, there's going to be a whole lot of people using 20 nanometer from either of those companies. They may instead be waiting for the 16 and 14 nanometer FinFET stuff. But again, Josh will know about that as well. So I wrote this news story kind of saying, hey, here's the situation. It's kind of interesting to see Intel doing this. They have maybe some empty fab space they have to fill. And is it possible that the business unit for production beat out over kind of the business unit of processors and controllers and that kind of stuff? And I actually got a note from Intel saying, hey, nothing you wrote is incorrect, but here's a clarification. And they wanted me to make sure I pointed out that Altera, the FPGAs they are producing, do not directly compete with any market that Intel is in currently or that Intel is currently planning to compete in. So even though these have Cortex A53 processors in them, none of the chips that Altera is designing or at least that they're producing on Intel's 14 nanometer fabs in the coming year will be system processors. They're all going to be FPGAs for very specific uses like networking and really base level embedded computing. So Intel wanted to be very upfront and say, hey, look, we understand that there's this kind of conception about what's going on, but just so you know, Altera, the parts that Altera is making with us are not going to be competing with us. And that kind of, again, brings us back to the status quo of, will Intel allow somebody who is their competitor to use their facilities to potentially make a product that will, be better than what Intel is building with the x86? I think, as it stands now, Intel as a company doesn't have to do that. They don't have any financial reason to do that. They're still making billions of dollars a quarter, so they don't need to depend on their production facilities to be a heavy lifter in terms of income. Maybe that'll change in the future, but it doesn't appear to be changing right now. But it's still pretty interesting news to see ARM processors being built at Intel fabs.
So basically what we can come away with is that Intel is unable to fulfill orders of potential wafer starts per week with their own products, with their fabs. Now, fabs are multi-billion dollar constructs that if you do not have them running 100% or close to it, then you're really wasting a lot of the potential of your income. And so it makes perfect sense that if you look at the die sizes of their latest chips and the slowing PC market, and even though they're trying to get into the growing mobile market, they still have not perhaps achieved the foothold that they were wanting. They have a lot of fab space left that people could utilize. And so they have gone out to other, people who are not direct competitors like Altera and said, hey, are you interested in buying fab space from us? We need to have a greater utilization to amortize the investment that we have in this $7 billion fab. And you would be a great partner because you're not directly competing with us, and you could pay us money.
Oh, and we're going to be getting into, network devices and such in the near future. And so it'd be nice to have some dry runs on some little tiny chips going through our fabs.
Yeah, and Altera's, as Knight said in the chat, they're not a new customer. They have been there, I believe, at 22 nanometer and 32 nanometer with Intel. So, they've been around them. And again, the biggest thing is they have products that do not directly compete with Intel. So this is an interesting thing that they are willing to open up such a cutting-edge node to guys like Altera. And certainly the other FPGA guys are grinding their teeth and pissing and moaning about not being included.
Xilinx.
What?
Sorry, Xilinx.
Yes, they were not included in the cornucopia. That is the 14 nanometer Tri-Gate process from Intel. Now we can go on for hours about process tech. And
but Maury is probably
14
chomping at the bit right now.
Yeah, well, what can you do? So we'll move along.
No.
Maury, you haven't said a single thing tonight. Okay, maybe you said one thing. Did we even do the introduction? I'm Josh Waltz.
No, we didn't.
No.
Anyway,
But
I'm
he is Josh Walrus.
Waltz.
I'll vouch for that.
No, see, Josh at Josh Tech, it's only
Josh
Josh
Tech
Walrus.
does not care
all of us
about
others
the
are just
underlings.
little peons.
They're irrelevant.
We're irrelevant.
Yeah. Move it, Maury.
Move it. All right, so what Josh was alluding to is that this week we actually had a cooler review from me. The Thermalright Silver Arrow SB-E Extreme. You gotta love that name, although it's nicer than some of them. This actually was a really nice cooler. It's rather big. It's got 8. Basically, what it is, it's a standard design copper aluminum hybrid cooler. It's got aluminum radiator with a copper base plate and 8 copper heat pipes running in a U pattern through, ending in both of the vertical radiators and going through the copper base plate. Really nice design, performed really well. It includes everything you need for both AMD and Intel systems for mounting, but it is really big. The one thing, or one of my kind of gotchas that I had with this
Maury,
cooler
it's the
was
Twin Towers.
What? It's the
two towers.
The Twin Towers. Yes.
Tolkien
Yes, except
would
these are
approve.
not towers of evil, Josh. So you don't have to worry about goblins
Saruman
and
on one,
stuff invading.
Sauron on the other. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need Sauron and what's his face. Yeah, you don't have to worry about that.
Saruman.
Sauron and Saruman. That's right. Yeah, I just watched that this weekend too.
The Valyar.
But anyway, the one of the gotchas with this cooler was the hold down mechanism. The hold down mechanism, I found this to be one of the more complicated of the mechanisms to actually construct, because you basically it's kind of like a the top plate is like a sandwich. You gotta construct the CPU cage mechanism first, and then you have a plate that sits on top of the cooler that you have to screw in with 2 little screws into the plate sitting on top of the board. And Ken, if you want pictures of that, it's what was that? The second page in review. Actually, you can go to the second. Yeah, you can go to the second page of the review, about 4 or 5 pictures down there. You got it. Okay. Yeah, you see those the screws on each side. those you have to those attach the top plate and hold down the cooler to the actual mounting bracket. They're not very easy to get in, and I really didn't really like this mechanism.
Did you have your extensible LED screwdriver?
Yeah, yes, I did, but that didn't really help because it still was a pain to get those screws in. It's just it's not necessarily actually physically screwing the screws into the holes. It was making sure everything aligned correctly, because you had to have you had this huge cooler that was basically sitting precariously on top of your CPU. You know, it was sitting flat, but it's shifting. You know. And then you have a base plate that's sitting on top of that you have to line up. You have to line the holes in the base plate up exactly with the holes in the CPU mounting cage, and then you have to screw it all in while you're holding the cooler in place so that it doesn't fall over and wreak havoc on your board, memory, GPU, whatever you have plugged in while you're trying to put this thing on. So it really was not the easiest thing to put on. The other thing is that this cooler you can only put in one orientation. It will only go front to rear, which front to rear is basically sucking in through the memory, blowing out through the rear panel, or the other way. You cannot mount it so it's going from between the PCIe bus and your top panel, of your case. But as far as performance went, though, if you want to go to page 5 in your review, Ken, the performance numbers were really good. I mean, this thing outperformed even the Raystorm kit, which is a DIY water coolant kit that we reviewed earlier in the month. I mean, the numbers on it are phenomenal. The numbers reported in the review are deltas, based on the room temp, the ambient temp that those deltas are based on are between 26 and 28 C. So if you tend to run your house a lot cooler, you're going to get even better performance. But I don't have millions of dollars to run my house cooler. So,
but do you want to know what the travesty of this entire thing is?
What?
I just checked on Netflix. Not only is it not on streaming, but my wife apparently on 12/28/2010 indicated that I was not interested in this title.
That's not very nice of her.
Wait, what do you?
No, it is not. I'm afraid
We're
I'm
on
going to have
Kroll
to
now.
go with the rule of thumb and get the stick out. No bigger than the width of my
Did I just get abducted
thumb.
by aliens or something? Did I miss a
beat
whole half
her.
hour?
Kroll.
Yeah, but
She's
where
not
did that
interested in
come
Kroll.
from?
I'm sorry. This does not work for
get
me.
it.
I'm calling my divorce lawyer.
Move to Montana. Why would I want to move? I'm from New Jersey. I'm not from Montana. Sorry.
Right.
Okay. Well, anyway,
Moving along.
So, yes, moving along.
You're in
So,
Texas.
Yeah, I live in Texas, but I'm from New Jersey. I'm a Yankee
That's
in
why-
enemy territory. Yes.
That's why it costs so money to keep your house cool.
Well, yes, but I don't want to spend the money that would keep my house cool to 70 C all the time during 100-degree temperatures. I don't even think my heat pump could deal with that. It would probably die.
Wait, you live in
70 C
70
would be
C?
bad.
That's like 150
no,
degrees
it's 70
Fahrenheit.
70 F, not 70 C. Yeah, that would be.
Okay.
Sorry. Anyway, okay. So I tested both the Ivy Bridge and Haswell. And of course, Haswell temperatures were a lot hotter. You can check out the numbers, but this cooler performs really well. The one Achilles heel of it is the fan noise. It is not quite hair dryer fan noise, but it is loud case fan noise. It was right about 60 decibels, about 59 decibels that I measured through an app on my cell phone. There's a
So it'll sound like a 290X.
It's like it's probably approaching the 290X. Yes, so it's rather loud. I mean, I don't like it that loud, and my wife would pretty much kill me if I had something running that loud anyway. She's very sensitive to those noises. So that's why, I mean, this, because of the performance of this cooler, we did give it a silver award. It didn't get a gold award or an editor's choice because of the fan noise, because of the weird mounting bracket. I mean, it really was quite a challenge to put on.
Well,
and the
yeah,
fact
but
that
it's not like you were going to drive that
orientation on-
screwdriver through the motherboard.
Yeah, that's
You
another
got to
thing.
remember
It's-
those mounting clips.
Well,
Yes, I
was
totally
getting close to that,
destroyed
Jeremy. I mean, this
memory
was,
traces
Oh, yeah.
with a screwdriver. It was bad.
More than once.
Yeah.
Damn you, Arctic Cooling. Damn you.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a decent cooler, and it's not too pricey. You know, you can find it pretty much anywhere. And Thermalright is a very well known name. I mean, shoot, I remember using those on the old AMD system. So that's it, though.
So, who wrote about the NVIDIA GeForce experience? Was that Q, Ken?
No,
Q,
that was
Ken.
Scott. Scott.
Ken,
Scat.
talk about it. It's a scat can. No? Talk to
Well,
us.
there's this technology called ShadowPlay, and it records your gameplay. Let's see. ShadowPlay, they announced it.
Was that a ding that I heard?
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
Okay.
ShadowPlay, they announced with the 780, I think, maybe 770. Somewhere in that time frame. It is a piece of software built into the NVIDIA driver that will allow you to always record the last up to 20 minutes of gameplay without pegging your processor. So basically, it uses the built-in H.264 encoder they've included on the higher-end Kepler chips, and the idea is that you aren't straining your processor for video encoding while playing games, which is good. Scott gave it a try, and he found it to be pretty good, I think. I don't know if anyone...
It ruined the color of his name.
Yeah, he very, very, very particular about the color of his name in StarCraft. Let's see if I can pull that up here. I don't know where the name is in StarCraft
He
UI.
hid it in shame, I think.
Aww.
But long story short, the colors are a little bit flat on the recording because, that's important to people that like to record themselves playing games, which is probably shockingly true because I don't really record myself playing games. But hey, if you want to be a popular YouTube star and you want to put your gameplay up there, this is going to be something that's pretty cool. And essentially, what was it, a 660?
650 and up.
Yeah, 650 and up. So, if you've bought an NVIDIA card in the last couple of years, hey, boom, you can just record for free. It's an interesting idea. You don't have to buy anything separate. But
The cool demo, which I showed off in Montreal a couple weeks ago, is that they will be enabling direct streaming to Twitch at 1080p, 60 frames a second, in the next revision or so.
60 or 30?
60 frames a second.
Wow. That's
Which is nice.
Bandwidth.
People try to stream 60 frames now, but just throwing that strain on your CPU while trying to game on the same computer just isn't really all that possible. So that could be a real game changer for them with how popular Twitch and all of those sites are becoming. Something cool, a value add.
So, Kelly didn't drop off the dog at your place to hang out for a while?
No doggy.
Oh.
aw,
Ken, you may not realize this, but this episode is brought to us by Carbonite. Carbonite.com. Carm.
which means we're never going to be able to forget it because it will always be there.
Yes. Use the offer code PC.
So
For 2-3 months.
it's weird. I think Ryan's last video he recorded was about Carbonite.
You know what? Rest in peace, Ryan. Tell us about Carbonite.
But at least you're encased in carbonite, so maybe one day.
Maybe one day your Princess Leia will come.
This episode of the PC Perspective Podcast is brought to you by Carbonite Online Backup. Your life is on your computer at home, and your livelihood is on the computers at your small business. To really be protected, you need online, off-site, in the cloud backup from Carbonite. With Carbonite, your files are automatically and continually backed up, so you never have to think about it. Once you have Carbonite, the computer disaster isn't really a disaster because Carbonite makes it easy to restore your backed up files. Over 1 million customers trust Carbonite to protect their home and small business computer files with plans starting at $59.99 a year. Your better backup plan for home and for your small business is Carbonite. Start your free trial today at Carbonite.com with the offer code PC and get 2 bonus months with purchase. That's Carbonite.com, and the offer code for 2 bonus months is PC.
Thank you, Ryan, for speaking to us in such gentle terms. Anyway, moving on to news of interest. We already covered one news of interest, namely the, Altera thing. But, we had lots of other things to talk about. And this first one, I have absolutely no idea. Time to give up on programming applications for Skype. Please, Jeremy, bail me out because I'm clueless.
Well, it's not like we've ever used Skype before. We tend to avoid it like the plague. We don't ever force Skype to do things it was never intended to do in the first place. Now, do we?
Like being hit with a hammer.
No, it was intended to have that happen.
I've gone through a few screens that way.
Yes, literally through them.
Yes.
There has been a Skype developer's kit around for a long time. People integrating Skype into their websites before Skype to click to call. Certain motherboard manufacturers, including Skype in a pre-UEFI BIOS, so that you could just boot directly to Skype. I cannot remember the name of it, but there have been a couple of ways of recording Skype from outside of the actual Skype interface and using your own build your own API. Well, if you didn't know that Microsoft bought Skype a while ago for gobs and gobs and gobs of money,
Pocket change.
They did. Come on. We were just making a comparison to a purchase not too long ago. It was, $58 million they sold for this? I have to dig back to find out exactly what it was.
I thought Skype was a $1 billion buy.
It was ridiculously expensive.
Yes.
And so it was one Instagram?
It is technically now bundled with Office 365, and Microsoft Link is probably going to build off of it. They
cut out the very popular instant messenger so you can get Skype.
Yep. No
MSN was
for
a solid product that I use daily.
Oh, come on.
No,
Skype is a way more popular IM platform than
and
Live.
To be honest, I
was
still use MSN daily, except, a bolt-on like Trillion or something that still connects to MSN, or at least my ID. But as of December, the plan is to cut off all support for third-party apps, anything that you're doing with a Skype API, which exists, because, it's going to interfere with compatibility somehow. Because, the guys designing their own API don't do any compatibility testing whatsoever.
Well,
so there is a petition out there. Change.org gets incredibly effective at changing things, but if you got a couple of minutes to spare, throw your name into the petition. I doubt it's going to happen, so stop developing your Skype APIs and move on to something else.
Very nice.
Sorry.
NVIDIA finally dropped prices. I think that our good friend Ryan alluded to this, but the GTX 770 and GTX 780 dropped significantly in price. $70 for the GTX 770. It went from $399 down to $299. $399. Good Lord. $399 down to $320.
$400 to $330.
Sure. $70. You love it. And the GTX 780 went from $649 down to $499. So these were pretty significant drops. And not only that, but they got bundled. Bundled at the top end was Splinter Cell, the new Batman, and Assassin's Creed 4, a plus $100 off our good friend, The Shield, which Nathan Fillion tweeted about emphatically because he got one today. But it looks like he needs some
from
housework.
3 days, apparently.
What's that?
Apparently you will not hear from him for the next 3 days.
Yeah,
As
3
he
weeks.
downloads
3
Android
weeks.
apps
He
and
will be
plays them.
gaming. So I'm not sure he's going to be recording any new castles, so take it with a grain of salt. These prices were needed badly. AMD undercut them for weeks. Their 7970 products, end-of-life stuff, were selling like hotcakes. Their R9 280Xs and 270Xs, again, were selling very well. And finally, NVIDIA took the bull by the horns and made some much-needed price drops, especially in the face of the 290X and the supposed upcoming 290.
The Titan will still cost you as much as a workstation card because, well, guess what?
It's a workstation card. Yeah. Moving along. Intel 2014 desktop roadmap. Broadwell-K late in 2014. Jeremy, what do you know?
Well, I know that I ain't getting Broadwell-K for Christmas this year, but I might be getting it next year.
But do they know it's Broadwell-K Christmas in Africa?
It's going to be a little bit longer for them.
Yeah.
But, hey, at least Ivy Bridge E, pretty close. Haswell E, yeah, it's going to be next year. Apparently, DDR4, these things that, a lot of us, because there's a lot of people that looked at Sandy Bridge and Ivy Bridge and said, yeah, when's the E version coming out? I want to hold on till that. Same with Haswell. So it is essentially confirmed for now that the enthusiast level enthusiast level chips will be coming out holiday season 2014. We did have a little bit of a discussion about this as to whether it was a process difficulty or as to whether more likely it was a heat difficulty. And, I think for the most part, I generally agree that Intel is not about to just release an enthusiast chip and say, yeah, the mainstream and low power will be coming sometime. They don't need to do that. They're very comfortable. It's nice to see them feeling a bit of pressure to put out new stuff. So I think that, at least in my opinion, and I think in yours as well, Josh, that it's more of a making sure that they can produce chips with lower heat TDP at the same time that they release the enthusiast products.
Yeah, the whole 14 nanometer process from Intel is still a mystery to us. We don't know how well it performs. I think I do know that the metal layers are still like 22 nanometer based. So what exactly are they gaining with this processor and process? We still don't know. It's going to be smaller. It may run hotter per square millimeter than what we've seen before. But again, it's a big question mark because we start hitting into some serious lithography issues, metal deposition stuff. I don't know. It's hard to say.
And frankly, stop competing with yourself. Stop competing with yourself. Stop competing with, I'd love to see the competition, but right now Intel really is, for the high-end stuff, competing with themselves.
Yeah, the AMD APUs, while interesting products in themselves, are not going up against the 3770K or the 4770K as it is.
So why release a 5770K?
I'm not entirely sure, but you know what? We're going to see what Intel does. Again, they delayed the first products by about a quarter. These are going to be the BGA-based mobile Broadwell products, and they will have better, thermal and power capabilities per clock than the previous generation. But I'm not entirely sure what they can do beyond that. Once they start clocking up, how do we see voltage rise? That's going to be the big question. So it's going to be interesting to see. Next one, 343 Battlefield 4 fail launch DRM'd. This is from Scott. Apparently, he is in an ISP in Canada, in North America, that is not supported by Origin, and so he can't play it.
He tried two of them.
What's that?
He actually switched ISPs.
How can an ISP not be supported? How does that work?
Probably not the ISP, unless their network gear has got some really screwy dates going on, which I just don't see. So, Al, did you buy Battlefield 4?
I did not.
Josh?
No.
Maury?
No, I have Batman.
Neither did I.
So the one guy that tried couldn't get
Why
it.
didn't I buy BF4? There you go, Scott. Sorry, Origin makes a habit, as he's proved with 3 games in a row. They make a habit of not doing so good on the release dates.
Yeah.
Or the support.
The
or
release dates are
the
just suggested,
compatibility.
right?
You know what? You're going to have to just stop and not play for another 24 hours. Deal with it, Canadian. You're only 33 million of you up there. You're peanuts as compared to Europe or the Ukraine.
Yes, but our peanuts are bigger than you.
Oh my God.
You are our hat, Jeremy.
Yeah, and you're the ass that we're wearing. You know.
Exactly. Lenovo. Apparently, they resurrected Steve Jobs, and he is working for them now. They just introduced their 8-inch and 10-inch Android-powered yoga tablets, and you know what? They look pretty nice. What can you tell me about these, Jeremy? If anything.
Well,
or maybe Ken. I don't care.
I'm surprised you didn't pick up on this, Josh. They're using MediaTek processors, SoCs.
MediaTek. That's that fine Chinese product that is out of China. Hence, Chinese.
So it's a
The
quad-core
MT125.
A7. Yeah, it's the quad-core A7.
Quad-core A7, yeah, that's
how do you
the
feel about that, Josh?
low-power, low-performance version, but still pretty decent. Yeah, I think Lenovo pretty much sacrificed performance for these products for battery lifespan.
Of which they didn't
stuff.
advertise.
Yeah. And they're skinny. And they're tiny.
Oh, but I'd love to see a Bay Trail version. Yeah, because Bay Trail is actually looking pretty impressive. But, I mean, both the 8 and the 10 are using the same bloody MT8 125 processor. It's kind of a deal breaker in a way, you know? Just not.
Maury
is
is
know
so
what
unhappy
happened.
he's chipping away ice in a cup.
I should really look at what camera I'm switching to instead.
That should be
Let's
a
fund that
good idea.
I got so many things going on. So many things.
But
Yeah,
in terms
whatever.
of design, Lenovo has a nice-looking product. It does last a long time. The MediaTek A7 is a quick processor. May not be the quickest. It's not certainly going to compete with Bay Trail. But boy, is it going to last a long time. It looks nice. And people who appreciate looks may be a little bit more forgiving when it comes to performance. Especially when the damn thing runs for 16 to 18 hours or whatever they're telling us it is.
And the 8-inch goes for $250. The 10-inch goes for $300 even. There is a detachable Bluetooth keyboard for only the 10-inch version, which is an additional $70. So if you're looking for something cheap that's still going to be able to run WinRT and just basically be usable, it's not that much of an investment. I've seen Kindles go for more than that.
Yeah, apparently it is 18 hours max of
That's
use.
not bad.
That's a lot of battery life in something that looks that skinny. Because believe me, I'm not that skinny, and my battery life is far below that.
Yes, but your battery is reaching end of lifetime, and while it does recharge properly, needs to be replaced. That's how Lenovo hints that the battery should be replaced on some laptops. Well, the battery does retain a full charge. It is reaching its end of life and should perhaps be replaced with a younger model.
My wife does not agree with that. But you know what? We have gone like an hour and 14 minutes so far. And it's reaching end of life for us. So we better move along to the hardware software picks of the week. Jeremy, since Ryan is gone and he's hoping for a safe flight from Santa Clara to Salt Lake and then Cincinnati, or is he going to Lexington?
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati.
Sure.
Nice. It would be nice that he would be able to arrive safely so he could sign checks
This is true.
this month.
On the other hand, I doubt we're keeping him up.
Probably not. Jeremy, what did you pick?
So you've probably seen phone blocks at some point over the last couple of weeks. The idea that we'll give you a little puzzle shell and you can assemble a cell phone out of puzzle pieces. And just about anyone with even the slightest basics in electronic engineering going, so where's the bus? How do you pass power? This is nice, but I don't see how it makes sense. Well, a nice company that was bought by Google not too long ago, Motorola, bought a nice little company out of Israel called Modu that was actually working on a modular cell phone that would make a bit of sense, which was an actual functional shell. So the basics were there. The display was already there. The input was already there. The battery specification was already there. Some of the antenna were already there. But for additional power, you could add on, sort of like you buy a BGA motherboard, which is technically functional with one chunk of RAM and a hard drive, and away you go. This is what they were doing, was something that already exists, which you can upgrade. So Project Era is now a thing. They've looped in some of the guys behind Phone Blocks. They've also looped in some people from Motorola that didn't go to Google, but were sort of still fishing around for a job. And it looks kind of interesting, both in a, hey, I can make my cell phone better than yours, and, hey, part of my cell phone broke. I don't have to throw the whole damn thing out. I can just throw a little piece out and replace it with something.
So, Jeremy, if you're walking and talking with this and you drop it on the ground and it breaks into pieces, when you step on pieces, will it hurt as much as Legos?
I doubt it, because there's nothing except those little tiny lead Star Wars miniatures that they used to sell that hurt as much as stepping on Lego.
Well, now that we have that out of the way. Speaking of price adjustments, this MSI Gamer Board 770 2 gig, $329, get 3 games with it. Apparently it tests out very well. It's a nice product, and it's inexpensive. And it runs cool. It's got the 2 big fans. MSI Gaming. $399, $299, $329. Games. $100 off Shield. You too could be like Nathan Fillion. Buy one.
They probably sent him his for free.
Probably.
Shh.
He's
Just
only
saying.
like
Aren't
a big
supposed to
star or
mention that.
something.
Anyway,
Alan, tell us what you want. What you really, really want.
so aside from sales, the those Samsung A40 Evos are going for just cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So all the way up to a terabyte for $600, which is just insane for a solid state drive. So we're talking between 70 and 60 cents a gig, depending on which capacity you go for. And they don't appear to be like blowout sales or anything. That's just the price.
Well, they were
Like-
out of stock on the smaller ones earlier this week.
You're going to probably get some really good sales of those around Black Friday, Christmas time, which is what that means. I mean, yeah, those prices are
Yeah,
very nice.
The
I mean, it is
magical 50
possible it-
cents.
it's possible they can go a little bit lower, but they're pretty cheap right now. I mean, really, there's no excuse anymore.
I mean, look at Alan. He's pretty cheap right now. And that caught his attention.
Yes.
And he owns his weight in SSDs.
Not only that, but you should have seen what he showed up in earlier with on his face. The dude has obviously been hanging out in some shady areas.
I have shade tree areas.
Yes. Maury, tell us about that screwdriver.
Screwdriver.
The what?
Yeah, no, I got a new.
Does it have the extendable tip? Show us the extendable tip.
Yes, it has an extendable tip. Wait, let me see if I
Oh,
can.
come on.
Here
Extend
we go. Wait,
the
here we
tip.
go. Look, here we go. Here we go.
Performance anxiety.
Okay, that's nice. Now, light it up for us. Pretend
Here, wait,
it's a
here we go.
lightsaber.
Go. Whoa, yeah.
Oh, lightsaber. Extend the tip with the lightsaber. Come on, dude.
Oh, okay, all right, hold on here.
Okay, turn it on.
Oh,
No, you're turning Josh on by pulling that out.
I am your father.
Oh, no. No, don't do it, Josh. Sorry.
Tell us about it.
No, all right, so I saw this deal on one of the forum sites for this screwdriver. It was like $4 or $5 or something at Lowe's. I mean, it's decent. It's a really nice screwdriver. It's the only downside of it that I tend to like rotary, ratcheting screwdrivers. It's not ratcheting, but everything else has got it. It comes with 9 tips. It's got 9 super bright LEDs built into it, and it's got a nice little push button thing on the end of it that you turn on and off the LED with. It takes 3 AAA batteries, so it's you don't have to worry about those annoying watch batteries. It works real well. The LEDs are really bright, and especially if you're working on motherboards or other small things, the LED the flashlight, I've actually found myself using that more than I use my regular small pen light for close-up work. So I mean, it works really well. And for $5, you can't go wrong with it. I think they were fire selling them. I think usually they're like somewhere between $10 and $20 or something. So, but it's a really nice screwdriver, and that's all.
Sweet. All right. Well, guys, that is the end. You can get a hold of us at podcast@pcpro.com. Again, you can watch these at pcpro.com/podcast. Usually, Ken gets it out less than a day later in variable quality formats. You can follow Ryan at twitter.com/Ryan Shroud or twitter.com/PCPer. With that, I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
Alan went away to work on his car, if you know what I mean.
And I'm Maury Titleman.